Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, listener. It's your host, Lara Jane, and I am so excited. I have a new best friend, and Lisa's here to talk to us about decluttering. And I get so excited about this topic because it's not decluttering your closet, it's decluttering your life, your whole life. And so, Lisa, I love this topic. Help me better organize my thoughts and my life so that I can have, I don't know, there's not just more productivity, but just more contentness too. So bring it on, Lisa. And Lisa's information is in the show notes already, but I'll remind you at the end because you're going to love her. Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Lara. I am so excited to talk about this topic. It is one of my favorites, and especially in the context that you're talking about. We see a lot about clutter and decluttering out there, and most of the time it's, what are you doing with your closet? Or how are you working your kitchen, right? And believe me when I say that is super important, because our environment outside and around us absolutely affects and many times reflects what's inside our heads. But the more that we think about clutter in a different way, and that's what we're doing today, the better we can live and breathe easier. My business mantra, my personal mantra is to do less, live more, breathe easier. That's the goal. So yeah, what you're saying is we can not only be more productive and be more satisfied, but also be less stressed. And don't we want that? Because I just see the path that everyone goes on in the doing, and the collecting of things as the path to burnout. Can we take the other path, please?
Well, I'm sure my husband would love to have you here because he always says, we're going to need a bigger house if you keep buying stuff. But that is the external part. And I really love your approach to the internal decluttering. And I'm excited to hear about this. How do we get started?
I think we should start with defining it. And one of my favorite and simplest ways to do it is through a quote by Peter. Oh my God, I just lost
Peter, what's his name?
Peter, what's his name? Oh my gosh.
It will be correct in the show notes. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Here's the quote that we want to focus on. Clutter is not just the stuff on the floor. It's anything that stands between you and the life you want to be living.
How profound. I'm getting chills.
So when we think about that, right? Okay. Yes, it can be the stuff on the floor because that can get in between you and the life you want to be living. When people love to do things like crafts, and they have lots of stuff, someone else says that's clutter. Or you have a lot of books, someone else says that's clutter. But it feeds you and it nourishes you and you love it. Oh, wait a minute. By this definition, that's not clutter. So now turning it inside. When you have things that get in between you and the life you want to be living, right? That's clutter. Well, that would be definitely the thoughts, the self-talk that you cover on this show, right? That we're talking about all the time here. It would also be even good things like all the ideas. I work with multi-passionate creatives. I am a multi-passionate creative. I love so many things. I get so many ideas. I, constantly innovating. And that's a beautiful thing, but it's also potentially clutter generating. And what I mean by this is that when we have all the ideas, when we have the information overload from social media, right, from the interwebs, we have information at our fingertips, which is the most amazing thing, especially for a researcher like me. I cannot have too much data. I love it, but there's a limit. How much can we carry? How much can we process? That's what I'm talking about with mental clutter. That's what I'm talking about, the internal side of it. It's not just what's in your closet. It's what's in your brain all the time, potentially keeping you from being your best. And it doesn't mean that it's going to keep you from functioning. I think we've proven that. I'm sure you and I have done that in, raising families and running businesses and doing so many different things. But there's an element of constant chronic distress that comes with always having these thoughts, always, not just the thoughts, but the worries, the guilt and the shame. And then, of course, all the subsequent stress that comes with it. That is what we're talking about when we talk about mental clutter and how we need to declutter it.
Oh, wow. I never really thought, I knew our thoughts were clutter in a sense, but, some of the ways that I work on rewording things to take away the shame, to take away the limiting thought. And, how do I free that up? And I never thought of that as really decluttering. And I love that because it is what's getting in our way between us and being that next level us that we want to be. And even just that thought of what somebody else is thinking about me is in our way. Why do we? I know why we care. We don't want to get thrown out of the pack. We want to have, we need to somehow find that group that we belong with. So I understand why we do it, but we hold ourselves back and we change ourselves for what we think somebody else is thinking.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, the way that I work as a productivity strategist is to talk about the practical side of things, like our to-do lists. And it amazes me how much productivity mindset is a part of that process, where it's like, is this your to-do list? Why are the things that are on there? This is urgent. Whose urgent is this? It's like asking all these questions about what you have on your list, because it's not only a list, it's also the meaning you put behind it. Because if you have this huge long list with things that maybe aren't supposed to be there, and I find this more often than not with my clients, that there are so many things we can remove and actually declutter from the list. But then there's the feeling that we have behind it. Like you have something, and come on, I know you're listening right now, and it'll take you a second to think of the thing that I'm talking about on your list that's been languishing there for weeks that you haven't gotten to. It's not just that it's been sitting there on the list. It's the fact that you are constantly seeing it and constantly being reminded about the fact that you haven't gotten to it. And then it's the meaning that you put behind the fact that you haven't gotten to it. I'm not working hard enough. I'm, there's something wrong with what I'm doing. There's something wrong with me. It's this constant spiral into that self-talk. So you have the things themselves, and then the meaning we attribute to them. And you're absolutely right. All of those things, it's like worry, right? Worry lets you suffer twice, but it doesn't change the outcome.
Yes. You suffer, and half the time that outcome never even happens.
Exactly. So same thing with the self-talk. And it's like the acceptance of, well, this didn't get done. Well, there are a lot of reasons. I know that I have to work on that, myself, where I'm constantly trying to walk my own talk because I know it's good for me. And I can be frustrated with things that I didn't get done. And it's not about making excuses. It's not about not taking responsibility, but it's also about understanding yourself and where you are in a situation and how much of what's going on in our lives impacts what we do. It can be the self-talk. It can also be the grief and the trauma that we're experiencing. There's so many things that impact our energy and how we approach whatever it is that we're trying to do. And there's also it just came to my mind, and I see it so often, is that expectation that we have of, well, okay, imagine if you will, you're with me on this, okay? it's a Saturday and you have all this time and you're like, I'm going to do all the things, all the projects. I have this huge list. We need to manage our own expectations. It's like, that's not really fair to put that on us, to play all that catch up, to do all those things. But that's what we subjected ourselves to. And then when we don't get it done, what do we say?
We punish ourselves like crazy. Like,
we're so mean. Mean Girls Day was yesterday as we're recording this, but but no, we don't need Mean Girls Day any day.
Yeah, it's a good book, by the way. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I love that book. You know, as you were talking, I'm like thinking about, the one, when people say, what is that one thing you would get rid of in the world if you could? For me, that one thing is expectation. It is the one thing that I think my meal's going to be good at the restaurant and it wasn't, and I get bitchy. Oh, sorry, I wasn't going to use those words. I get angry.
Salty.
Or, it hits that frustration level because I expected something. And the same with when spouses get angry at toilet seats being up and stuff. It's because we expected it to be different.
Yeah.
And I wish, we don't wish in this podcast either. It would be such a beautiful life if I could let go of my own expectations and just let things happen. I would not have as many angry moments.
Yeah, one of the mantras that I love to live by, and it's been coming around a lot lately, probably, again, in the context of what I do, right? I'm constantly thinking about productivity, and a big part of what I do, what I coach, what I live and breathe is the idea of habits, right? And it's this idea that you can control your actions, but not the outcome. And for some reason, we still tend to live in this space where we feel like we could control the outcome. And then when it doesn't, happen as we expected, as we wanted it to, then we blame ourselves. And it's a vicious cycle of it's like perfectionism where you're like, okay, if this were a GPS, there'd be no address that you're going to. There's literally no location for it. So how can you expect to have a proper path there? Same idea.
I mean, I never thought of it as my GPS. And if I don't have a destination, I don't even know when I get there.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm still on the journey. That would be nice. I mean, in some senses, yes, that would be part of getting rid of the crap in our minds, but we also need direction. And I think that comes back to that organizing and figuring out how we organize our internal self to start focusing on our priorities and the things that are important to us. And if you're early in your life, priority may come out to be money,
Mm-hmm.
And I did this. My kids suffered. My kids were alone. The daycare raised them because money was the priority. And I got lucky. My kids are great. But not everybody that takes that focus every kid reacts differently. And because they have so many different things going on, it's like, how do you really set those priorities so that you can, when you look at that to-do list you were talking about, that thing that's been put off for 3 weeks, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I just need to put in more effort, you can go, where are my priorities? Is this a priority? Should it be something that I put above the things I'm doing? Or is it something that really isn't important now? And just that whole thought process of getting clear with what your outcome wants to be. Yeah, it's the Stephen Covey's ready, aim, fire scenario, where you really focus on what am I going to hit? And if I don't take the time to set myself in that direction, you're not going to hit it. You might get lucky one time or another, but you're not going to hit it. So as we start setting our priorities and we start learning these things, we become more productive in the path that takes us to our goal. The productivity of moving paper from the inbox to the done box, or, isn't the same as hitting your goal. That's just busy work unless that's part of your goal. So I really like where you're going with this. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get a quick word from our sponsor. And when we come back, I just want to keep, really re-looking at that organizing or decluttering to, in a sense, where we hit those goals that we're looking for. So be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice. Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
Oh no, we are back. And I really want to feel more of this. When I have a goal, when I have a purpose, when I have a desire, and I make a plan for it, it's so much easier to meet than if I just let things randomly hit. So how do we set that decluttering, that internal whole life decluttering, to focus us better on the goals and the desires we want for our lives?
So when you were describing that, one of the words that you used that I absolutely love was purpose. Because this ties into another aspect I think is easy to forget when we are, setting a goal or saying we want to achieve a certain thing, is we cannot miss the values part of the equation of whether or not this is in alignment with who we are, what we believe, and again, the deeper meaning behind what we're doing. As you said before the break, when we're talking about shuffling papers around, that can potentially be busy work unless it's a step toward, our ultimate goal. But one of the biggest issues that I see as a coach is that when people say I'm not productive, or they're struggling with things, or there's too much busy, which leads to burnout and not enough actual productive, engaged movement, is that they're missing a true filter for what belongs and what doesn't. And that's how I work. And this is actually very traditional decluttering in terms of concept. I used to be a professional organizer. And so I bring a lot of that to the table now when we think about mental clutter, where we think, okay, if you think of a space, and you can use something that's you've done before, like a hall closet, and you know what the purpose is of that closet, for people to hang their coats and to have, extra shoes for inclement weather, and, maybe it's like have certain equipment or things that you need to take with you, or maybe an area for donations, things like that, where you're moving in and out of the house. And so I always joke that you could be cleaning out this closet and be like, a bowling ball. Nobody here even bowls. What happened there? You realize sometimes that you've collected things in spaces that don't belong. And the only way to figure out, decluttering's not getting rid of stuff. It's making space for what matters. It's identifying what belongs and what doesn't. You need to create filters. How do we do that mentally? By understanding our values, our strengths, our purpose, and then the goals that we want to achieve as relates to that. Because if you put something on your list to do, right, and you think it's going to move you toward your goal, but it doesn't align with who you are as a person, I don't care how good the habit is, I don't care how good the system is, it can be immaculate. You won't do the thing.
Amen. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't get done. And I love the way you put that is you don't have to declutter your whole life right now. Let's start with a whole closet. Yeah. What belongs here? And when you do that, it's like, maybe we just first identify those areas in our whole life that we want to declutter. My exercise, my health, my relationships, my work environment. And then start putting things where they belong and prioritizing them so that if the one thing, I'm trying to think of one that's not a priority here, they're all a priority, but we all have different visions for our lives and different ideas of how we want our life to be. And my vision for my life does not have to be your vision for your life. And so when I'm working on certain decluttering and me and someone else goes, what are you focusing on that for? That's where I think that bully comes out and it's not even that person, but it's us second guessing ourselves. But if you've taken the time to create your personal life vision, there's no second guessing. You can always go back to that vision and go, is this in alignment? And move forward. It gives me that sorting criteria, when you are sorting and you go, throw out, donate, keep, store, any room that you go through and you're organizing, you have these piles as you're going through it. When we moved into this house, 7 years ago, we had, I called it the storage basement. Everything in this great big pile downstairs that we didn't know yet where to put, and so it was weekend after weekend of going, bedroom, this room, long-term storage, garbage, and it's just, we need to do that same thing with our lives. You don't have to have it all figured out now, but you have to know what buckets you're going to be sorting into and where areas that they need to go. So as you pick up something, it can get put back where it belongs. My children are a priority. At one point, I was overwhelmed with work and balancing life, and they're all moved out of the house. It was the idea of trying to keep family dinner going, trying to keep that connection with them. And I got to a point where I told my husband, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It just is, it's one day a week, Jane, what's the big deal? But it was overwhelming with all the different dietary needs and all the, everything with, functioning on everybody. And we got to a point, and this is how I decluttered family dinner. Kids, I can't keep thinking about what I'm going to feed you for 3 to 4 days ahead of time. So for now on, you're having hot dogs or hamburgers. The focus of getting together is to have time together, not to have a glorious meal. And then you will bring the side dishes. Ta-da! Done. And it has been the best stress relief for me to just set that line in the sand. And we can do that in our own personal lives. What are you holding on to that you're creating this elaborate, wonderful thing for that can be simplified? Now, have I stuck with the hamburger or hot dog thing? No, but it took the stress off. Mm-hmm. If I'm stressing over what we're going to have, it's hamburgers or hot dogs. If I'm not stressing over it, it's whatever I feel like cooking. But at least it set the expectation. I now know that it's happening because we want to be together, not because they need food. And so how do we do that in our life?
Yeah, so you've gone to the value of what the actual action is, right? And gone to the heart of the matter so that you're focusing more on the meaning as opposed to the how, mm-hmm. right? You're letting go of the expectation of the how and digging into the meaning. I think what you're describing is saying, okay, there's something I need to achieve. I'm letting go of the how, and I'm trying to figure out what my energy is and my bandwidth essentially for this. When you were describing this, and then you were talking about like different spaces in a house and how when we do whole house, decluttering, we don't just declutter the whole house. We start with one space. And when you're decluttering, one of the things that I used to recommend to someone when they were not sure about something is to create a maybe box. You are allowed to say, I'm not sure. Now, when you have very clear filters and you know what belongs and what doesn't essentially in your life, you can pretty readily say yes or no. But sometimes there's the maybe. You get to say that with your new ideas or a plan that you have or something you'd really like to do. Maybe you would love to cook a special meal for your family as well, but that's just a next level that you're not ready for, you don't have the energy for, then that's like a maybe. We don't get rid of that completely, but you modified the situation to give you the space for it. If you have an idea for a business and you're like, I think I want to get into more group work or do something, a mastermind like we were talking about, or you want to do something along those lines and you're not quite ready for it yet, you get to put that in a maybe pile. You get to set that intentionally in essentially a not right now space. I'm going to revisit it. It's a parking lot. It's ideas for the future. It's next ideas. When you do that intentionally, as opposed to just letting it sit there in front of you, it's like seasonal items, right? You don't keep holiday decorations in your living room. You keep them in, the attic or the basement or a storage area that's dedicated for that. You can do that same thing with ideas and expectations, desires, wishes, dreams. Okay, we don't wish here, but whatever it is, maybe we dream. Whatever it is, you can put that in a special place to revisit. Set your calendar to say in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, let me look at this again. So it's not, again, about getting rid of, it's about making the space. How do you make the space? By modifying the how of what you do, by taking things that are a maybe and setting them to the side, by definitely finding the things where you're like, that doesn't belong. Let's go back to the blocks we originally talked about. When we're talking about blocking in physical clutter, that's pretty obvious because you can see you're like, I have to wind my way through a path to get to my couch. That's not working. Or I think there's a counter underneath all of these envelopes and papers. Ask me how I know. Yes, that's obvious. And then there's the mass of to-do items. That's not a realistic to-do list, but then there's also the stories we tell ourselves. Let's start with those small buckets, like that small room, like whatever it is, exercise or movement or something that you want to try to prioritize, and look at the elements. What is blocking you? Is it an expectation like, well, I have to look a certain way, or I have to do a certain exercise, or I feel like I'm uncomfortable in this space because that's not an identity I've ever had, or maybe it's an expectation that we have where, and I see this so much in habit development, where we think, well, in order for it to be of value, it has to be this much. And exercise is a great example of that. I've learned that 10 minutes is actually incredible. and now studies are like backing us up. If you can do 10 minutes at a time, 10 minutes a day, we have this expectation where it's like, well, what good is that going to do me? And then what good is that going to do me turns into why bother?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the block, then you're like, well, what good is it going to do me? Well, and then you explore, it's going to start a habit. And in order to really create a strong habit, you need to start with the smallest, easiest step possible. It is more powerful than you could ever imagine. So yeah, I would say start with that one bucket of something that you're like, I've been blocked, and figure out what the blocks are and how to release them. That's where I would go.
And with that scenario, I thought back to what you first started saying, and, what are the things that get in your way? Mm. And if you stubbed your toe on that same bucket every day for 3 weeks or a month, that is probably the bucket you need to start with. So it's like, how do you know where to start in all this decluttering? And I loved it's the one that's the most in your way, or the one that's in the way of getting that one done. Like, I cannot put this bucket away because the closet's too full. So identify what's in your way. And then is there something in its way? And start there.
The way you described that is, I'm so excited about the way that you described that so intuitively, because if you put it into professional organizing, decluttering terms, you can either start with an area that's the greatest pain point. Literally, it's really like, this needs to stop because it is just taking you down. Or you can start with something that's going to be pivotal, or like a real a turning point or a quick win that's going to like open up. So in the productivity side of things, there's a book called The One Thing. And I love this principle of it, which is that what's the one thing you can do such that it will make every subsequent thing either easier or possibly even moot. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. It's asking yourself the question of, okay, what's something pivotal? What's something that will really make a difference in, how I show up as a person? I know for me, it's been prioritizing sleep. I'll tell you that right now. I will never stop talking about how important sleep is just for everything we do, our overall wellness and productivity. But it's thinking about that next thing, all the different buckets, because we probably have many to choose from. And yeah, we can go with either the biggest pain point where we're like, I need to finally release that pain because the weight of it is too much to bear. Or, if I address that one bucket, that's going to have an incredible ripple effect. So those are two different directions you can come from, but both are equally powerful.
And we're all unique. And what might be a great solution for me, like my top of my list, is not going to be the top on somebody else's list. Right. And it's okay. We all have that prerogative. And I think, of course, this is going to be what I'm going to say is the most important because that's me. But really identifying you and finding a way to let go of what you think somebody else wants. Because then you're doing it for you and not for this person who doesn't even live in your body or live around you. It's like, oh, the boss at my job needs me to be X. And it's like, is that me? Is that who I am? Is that what I want? We have got to start making choices in our lives around what we feel today as our authentic self. Now, I have felt like I have been authentic for years. Am I the same as I was a year ago? No, because I changed. As I learn more and become more comfortable with the me I am, the more that allows me to expand and learn more about me. It's like peeling the onion, layer after layer. I have an authentic self. But now I know more about it, and I know more about it, and I'm learning to respond with that as my priority. And the second you allow yourself to be authentic, you're going to start being able to declutter the things that are the most important for you. And obviously, health hasn't been my top priority for years, but health is now my priority. It's now something. I don't want to wake up in a hospital bed again. I don't want to do these things. I don't want to have wheelchair assist around the airport. I don't want these things, so it will be a priority. Now, is that why I'm doing it? How I'm doing it because I want to be able to move. I want to be free instead of bound to something else. And so it's why. What is your why? What is your why? And let that drive where you start your decluttering, where you change your focus in life, and who you become.
And to remember too that part of the prerogative, you have so much prerogative, is to change your mind, to become a new and different person. It's why when we declutter and let's say we declutter our closet and we're looking at some of our clothing and we're like, wow, that seemed like a good idea at the time, you're allowed to change your mind. You don't have to, just because that was authentically you at one point doesn't mean that there's anything different with the new authentic you. These are your choices each and every time. And to your point about starting with you, starting with your why, knowing who you are authentically, may I say, and may I encourage you to not only do that because it's satisfying, but to do that because it makes you more productive and helps you lead a more fulfilling life. Positive psychology proves this to us. It's part of the basis for how I coach and how I teach and redefine productivity. We need to start with us and our strengths and our values and our personality and let that lead the way. And I promise you, even though it may not look like someone else's path, and it's not supposed to, by the way, it is going to be an incredible path for you that will lead to so much satisfaction and achievement.
I listened to lots of podcasts. So whose this one was, I don't remember. But one of the things, she came from a very religious group, and she was equating that straight and narrow path. So if you have any religious background, you might remember this straight and narrow path that we are supposed to walk on to get to Christ or God or whomever. And she's like, I'm taking my own path. All paths lead to that deity or universe or whatever anybody expects, but all paths lead to that better you, that better life. Some may be straight and narrow. Some may be a beautiful scenic route along the mountain, but it's being okay with your path and knowing that you're getting there. And whatever that goal is, it doesn't have to be a deity. That's just what it says in that book. So it's just pick your path.
Mm-hmm.
I am not here to judge your path. I am not here to change your path. I am here to help you understand that your path is the right path for you and that you can always change directions. And that is where the beauty of freedom lies, is you are not stuck in a rut, and at any time you can move out. And as we start to declutter our lives, that whole life perspective, you will be on your most beautiful path for you.
How amazing does that sound?
I know yeah, I'm not that perfect, but I have the vision and I'm moving on it. And, they say you teach what you need to learn most. Mm-hmm. And I have learned so much in this area of just allowing myself. And I'm now working on allowing everybody else that same freedom. Because I still get angry. Yeah, I still get frustrated when something gets in my way. And when it comes to decluttering, you cannot declutter people around you. You can avoid them. You can stay away, but you stop in your space and you need to let them do their own processing.
Yeah, I think boundaries and other things like that, they all relate. They're like cousins to decluttering in a way. But I think what we're doing is we're decluttering the energy that we've allowed into our space based on the meaning, based on the interaction, based on, other people's expectations or, demands that they have placed on us. And I think I see this so much with my clients, and this idea of obligations or all the ideas that, well, I promised someone that I would do this. Well, but also if you were, extremely sick, and this happens way too much, I think, where it's like, okay, now that's a reason not to be able to do it. Well, another reason is also you're overwhelmed. It's not benefiting you. It's not. And what I mean by that is like, it's not a good fit right now because I need to extend my energy in other places that are a greater priority. Sometimes we have to let others down in order to protect our interests. And that sounds selfish, but if you think about it in the context of so many things in our lives, for example, if I let someone down because I need to prioritize my health, because that's going to be a long-lasting way to keep me around for my family, for me to show up better, to serve better, to have a different ripple effect in this world. That doesn't sound selfish, does it?
No, it goes back to that quote of, I want to give you the best of me, not what's left of me.
There you go.
If you don't take care of yourself and become your own best, people only get what's left.
And also, may I add, we are givers. I know, I can see your heart, and I know that you're a giver. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not the only reason to take care of you. You're not taking care of you solely so that you can give better. You're taking care of you because you're worthy of it.
Oh,
but if giving matters, right?
So important to remember. I forget that one.
Yeah, you're worthy of it. And then if giving is important to you, you will give that much better as a result. So that's the win-win within, but the worthiness is the starting point.
Yeah, if you're not there, you can't. My authentic self gives. That's being authentic to me. It may not be to everybody else, but if I cannot support and be there for somebody who needs a listening ear, to be there for somebody who's never had unconditional love before, to just love everybody is, so many people have never really experienced that non-expectation love. And that's my goal, is to love everybody unconditionally, no matter what path you are on, no matter where you are going, and to be there and support your choices, not mine. And growing up, that's not how we were raised. You do this to fit in. You do this to please your parents. You do this to get good grades. And you have all these external expectations that we march our lives to. And it's a pretty large switch to stop following the external expectations. That doesn't mean they don't influence us. That doesn't mean they're not there, but they're not the highest priority. And so we've kind of gone from all this decluttering to the beautifulness that being decluttered gives you, is when you have everything in its place in your life. You're free. There's not things in your way. And yes, there are things in my way. I am not perfect. But you feel it, you see it, you know it. And so I love your message. I think it's going to help me a lot in better following my vision, because it will then help me do the sorting into buckets, doing that change of, here's the things that I have priority for, here's things I have, what bucket and which one do I deal with first? And just that small little process. It could be one day. You really have to have it all figured out first. It's like the maybe pile. It's that parking lot. When you were talking about parking lots, I'm thinking about being in the meetings that I used to attend all the time, and you had your agenda and you had stuff that came up, and then you had things that you put on the parking lot for future meetings. And when people would start wanting to get off track, which we're going to do because you're going to get distracted by all the things that have to be done, That parking lot is where you put it. I will do that, just not right now because I want to complete what I'm doing. And we call them squirrels, distractions. We call them whatever you call them. The better you can put them in their little cage for now and know that you're going to get back to them. They will not haunt you every day. The same thing when you were talking about that thing on your to-do list that's happened over and over and over again. Like 3 weeks later, it's still not done. It's okay to put it in the later pile. And it's okay to prioritize the later pile and to take them off one at a time. It's okay to leave them there forever if they end up not being a priority. And then when you finally realize they're never going to get done and you're not something that's going to support you or who you are, throw it out. Let it go. There is no need for it to be on that list if there is no benefit to you and your values.
And you want to know the best part about all of this and the tactics that you're talking about?
What you're talking about
is that every step you take, every bit of decluttering, that one step you're going to take just as soon as we finish this conversation is going to build that decluttering muscle. And it's going to be a delightful cumulative effect. So yes, it's a long process. It's a continued one, but it's one that builds on itself in such a fantastic way. So take heart, take that hope and run with it. It's decluttering time. It's going to be good.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good ending point. I love it. So, Lisa, this has been a real, I would say eye-opener, but brain enlightening session for me on taking that declutter process and that whole life. And you've already spoken so much wisdom. Can you either share what you think the very most important or some new last minute wisdom that we haven't brought up for our listener?
I've got 2 points I want to leave you with. One is when someone says, what's the first thing I can do because I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need to declutter? And that would be a mind sweep. It's something that I do. It's something that I have a guided a worksheet that's in my free Multi-Passionate Toolkit. It's in resources with a video. It's something I use in every workshop, everything that I do. So, and it's something you can do right now with like none of those things. Simply take 5 minutes and take everything that's in your brain and your heart, everything that you've thought of it during the course of this conversation, and write it all down. And remember that that's not your to-do list. That's a to-choose list. That is the one step that you can take. And the one thought I want to leave you with is a quote from Sophia Bush that I absolutely adore. Right now, you are listening and ready to take another step, but remember how far you've come and to celebrate who you are. And her quote is that you are allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress simultaneously.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your amazing perspective on life with us. Listener, I know that you're going to want to get a hold of Lisa. So check out those show notes, the quotes, the books, the reference, the links to her area are all there already for you. I'm going to the show notes to find these things because I love it. Lisa and I are not medical professionals. We are here for entertainment purposes, people who have found solutions in our own life and just want to share what's worked for us with you in hopes that better your life. The full disclosure is in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.